Welcome to the AdSense Flippers podcast. Are you sick and tired of gurus who have plenty of ideas but are short on substance? Worried that ebook you bought for $17.95 won't bring you the personal and financial freedom you long for? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others in their pursuit of niche profits without the bullshit. Straight from your hosts, Justin and Joe of AdSense Flippers.
Welcome to episode 9 of the AdSense Flippers podcast. I'm your host, Justin Cook, and I've got with me my business partner extraordinaire, Joe Magnotti. What's going on, buddy?
Hello, everybody. Almost in double digits.
Almost in double digits next week. So we've got a great episode lined up for you this week. We're going to get into outsourcing with VAs to the Philippines, specifically how you can minimize your workload and not suck at it. We've got a great intro. We want to go over some updates, some news and information we want to cover, and then we'll get into our ninja marketing tips, tricks, and our plans for the future. So let's get right into it, man. So the first thing we want to cover is we've got 2 new 5-star reviews on iTunes. Really stoked about that. We've got Dave here, says, I want to thank you for the honest and straightforward information you guys provide. It's very generous of the two of you to give out so much free info that's actually useful. Well, thank you, Dave. I hope you find this podcast just as useful as our previous ones, and we'll get into some really good information here later. Second one is from Brandon Patrick, who said the short and sweet is that it's a great podcast. Thank you guys. Pat and Spencer led me to your site, but it was you two that really brought it down to a level that made it approachable and not magical.
Yeah, Brandon, I really appreciate the fact that you find our advice actionable. I like the idea that we are making you money here in the short term.
And we're not magical either, man. No fairies and pixie dust. Just a lot of hard work, elbow grease, and internet marketing.
No Wizard of Oz here.
I know, it sucks, man. I wish there were like the get-rich-quick schemes. I wish that stuff was real, but I just never found that it worked. I mean, everyone I've talked to has never just magically had money dropped in their pocket, unfortunately.
If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Talk about money, though. We did have a damn good month this month, dude. Almost $45,000.
Well, we did have a huge sale of 72 sites for almost $20K.
I know, dude. That guy really turned it around for us. We were like, oh, we might be able to beat Pat Flynn this month. You know, it's kind of a little joke with us, and we're teasing him a little bit on Twitter. But he killed it, man. He got like $62,000 this month. So congrats to him, and hopefully we can have another decent month this month, although it looks a little worse off starting here early in February.
Well, we had some inventory problems, but I think we're going to solve that here pretty shortly. So look for the Buy Our Sites page to be updated. We'll have some more sites up there probably within the next week or so.
Other thing we want to talk about is here in Davao City, we started a new mastermind group. We've got some of the internet marketers together here, some of the expats that are running businesses, other outsourcing businesses and that kind of thing, and decided to get together every other week for a sit down. It's actually discussing business, going over business problems and things that are going well in our businesses, and putting someone in the hot seat, which is basically where we beat them up about an idea or a problem they have and try to give them alternative solutions they might have not have thought of. And I think it's going really well. We had our first meeting, went really exciting. We sat down for some Thai food and had a great time. So if you're thinking about relocating your business, whether you're in the Philippines or you're thinking about coming to the Philippines, I'd really recommend you come down to Davao City, take a look, and see if there's a place for you. Right now, we're getting people that come down here and just kind of end up staying, right? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like it. I think the meeting is good. It's useful. You learn by teaching, and you learn by just getting the thoughts and organizational ideas from other people.
Last Friday, we joined the American Chamber of Commerce here in Davao. I guess they were actually talking about shutting it down. We ended up going there with another expat that we know here. It's an American, and met the
Consular General.
Yeah, the Consular General for the Philippines from the U.S. Great guy. Got to talk with him a little bit. And I think it's something we can help out with, especially when it comes to like startups, internet marketing companies, that kind of thing. I think we can bring some value there.
Yeah, they definitely need some more Americans, and glad to see we're being some of the premier guys there in Davao chapter.
Yeah, also we want to say thanks to everyone who purchased our sites here last January, and our team wanted to thank you too. We ended up taking them out for a kick-ass videoke or karaoke night, and they all enjoyed it. You know, the funny thing is like even our team, you know, we have people who've been with us several years now, but they're a little nervous when the night starts off, right? They're a little timid, and they're looking at the food and wondering if it's time to go get the food. And things started kicking off, especially when Rose sang Like a Virgin, started shaking her hips, dude. That was insane, right? Yeah. Everyone was up laughing, smiling. So thank you, Rose, and thank you, team, for having such a great night, taking a part of it. And thanks for getting everything done.
The AdSense Flippers podcast.
So let's get right into the heart of this week's episode, which is all about outsourcing your work and minimizing your workload through VAs in the Philippines. Now, before we even get started, we have 11 points we want to cover, but before we even get started with that, I just kind of want to point out that, we're not the best outsourcers. There are people that know it better than us and everything, but we actually own an outsourcing company here in the Philippines. I mean, we live here. We're in Davao City. I live in Echoland.
I've been on the ground since 2009. We've been doing some sort of outsourcing at some level since 2006. So we have direct experience with people and virtual assistants for a long time.
We've directly hired more than 100 Filipinos. We've had countless contractors, and we meet with these people, and we meet with them on a regular basis. So you'll hear a lot of gurus that talk about what it's like to outsource to the Philippines. Well, we're here. We're hoping we can provide a unique perspective and really help you in your search for a VA that knows what they're doing with the experience we've had here in outsourcing. So let's get right into our 11 points. The first one is why the Philippines?
Yeah, I would say very simply, native English. If you've ever done customer service before to a bank or something like that, like Citibank used to have their customer service in India, you know how hard it is to speak to people from India.
Yeah, and that really makes a difference when you need to talk to your outsourcer, when you need to communicate back and forth, especially if something you need them to do that's very specific or that needs to be done a certain way. It can be confusing with the language barrier. And the Philippines is the second largest English-speaking country in the world.
Right. And they also have broad skill sets here. So anything from programming to design, all the way to the more basic data entry, transcription stuff, everything can be done.
Not just that, but there's also great value. I mean, you can get a comparable employee for about 1/10 of the cost in the US. Now, there are some benefits and some negatives that come with that, which we'll get into a bit later. But overall, the value here is fantastic.
And then the similar cultures. I mean, they still have the whole Catholic Christian mentality, and that makes it very similar for you coming from the West. It aligns your cultural differences and makes it a bit easier to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, then something like Thailand or Vietnam, for example, which may be a bit more difficult to understand culturally. Plus, I would say the Philippines specifically is more aligned specifically to the U.S., right? So there's a connection between the United States and the Philippines that a lot of other countries don't have.
And generally, Filipinos are pro-American.
Well, here's the other thing, too. How do you know if you should get a VA or not? I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, I think I should get a VA, right? And then they have nothing for that virtual assistant to do. So what's a good time for someone to actually get a VA, Joe?
Well, first, I would say cost-benefit analysis, right? Do you have a task that can be done cheaper offshore than it can be done onshore?
Yeah, and it's an actual task that you're doing on a regular basis, right? So you need to look at whether they're going to do as good of a job, and you need to see if it's going to save you money. Second thing is scalability. Let's say you have something that's working that seems to be making money, but it's you just churning away, right? That's something that you can definitely outsource to the Philippines. Take some of those easier tasks and push them offshore first.
Yeah, or if you have one employee in the U.S. doing it, and now you want to expand to 5, but you just don't have the money to do that, that's a perfect time to hire a little crew.
But here's the thing, don't hire a crew until you have documentation ready to go.
Yeah, you want it to be really good, strong documentation. We'll talk a little bit more about it later, but think screencasts, screenshots, that kind of thing.
Our third point here is what should you know before hiring a VA? Well, the first thing you can't do, and this specifically is related to niche sites, you can't say, hey, create me a site and I'd like to make money. I've actually seen people on Odesk that put this out there. They say, hey, I want to give you $1,000. You're going to create me a site that makes $500 a month. Go.
Yeah, I love this one, Justin, because look, if they could do that, why would they need you? They would just make it for themselves.
Absolutely. And we get this with outsourcing companies too. They say, okay, well, here's generally what our company does. We'd like you guys to do that, right? No documentation of the process, no explanation of how they do it. Just go for it. Please make it work and make us some money. Well, that just simply doesn't work.
Yeah, and then also I think you got to watch out for the yes, yes, yes to every question when you're interviewing outsourcers or potential virtual assistants. That is something you'll run into a lot. Can you do this? Yes, sir. Can you do this? Yes, sir. And you think everything is all right, and then when it comes down to do the task, you find out that maybe they're not as skilled as you thought.
Yeah, it's not even like they're trying to like trick you just to get the job. There may be some of that, but generally it's a cultural thing. They don't want to tell you no, right? It's rude to tell someone no here directly to their face. So they'll say yes, they can do it. Yes, they're thinking I think I can do that, but the truth is they really don't know. They just don't want to offend you.
Yeah, so that's why I think it's more important to look for trustworthiness and a value fit. If you don't have a lot of experience interviewing, Justin and I managed some teams back in the U.S. We had some experience with that, so it made it a little bit easier when we wanted to build a team here. But if you don't have experience, you'll know talking to people whether they're going to be a good fit with you working. every day. Take that slow, take a lot of time, make sure you interview the right people.
If you have interviewed people before, you have that gut feeling when you start talking to someone on whether you think that person's trustworthy. And you'll notice there are things they might complain about their old boss. They may worry too much about the pay or their hours, those types of things where they seem like they might be complaining, or it doesn't seem like a good fit. It probably isn't. You should hire someone that's aligned well with your values and someone that you trust.
Right, and then on the same merits, don't expect a startup team roundtable discussion here, okay? The virtual assistants that you're hiring are probably going to be more task-oriented.
Yeah, that's one of the things we came here, and other outsourcers have done the same thing, where they came here and they said, okay, we're going to sit down at a round table, everyone's equal, let's throw out ideas and try to really put this together, right, as a team. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. I've been a part of teams like that in the US, and it just didn't work. They expect a more hierarchical approach here in the Philippines. And so if you don't run it that way, then they won't respect it, and it won't get you as much good as if you did it from a top-down approach.
Where can I find a great VA?
Well, there are a bunch of virtual assistants in the Philippines on Odesk, right? But the problem with Odesk is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. There's a ton of people. It's almost like Flippa, right? We have to dig through all of the auctions and all the sites that are out there and try to find the good one. It can suck, right?
Yeah, that said, Odesk is good for short-term projects that you need to get done. When you just have one thing, you know how many hours it's going to take, and you just need it done once, Odesk is a great solution.
Yeah, I like contract work because you can get a real specialist.
Right, but if you're looking for a full-time VA, you're better off posting on job sites directly, like onlinejobs.ph, Craigslist, sulit.com.ph, jobstreet.com.ph. We'll put all those links in the show notes, but yeah, you really want to start posting as if it is a full-time job, because that's what it is.
Yeah, the cool thing about those job sites is there's a lot more Filipinos looking for jobs than there are people offering. So you're going to get a ton of applicants, and I don't know why that is. I don't know why all the job seekers are there, but not the employers. But that's a great place to go to pick up some great people.
Yeah, another type of solution is Virtual Staff Finder.
Yeah, so this is an offer from Chris Ducker, where basically Virtual Staff Finder will find you the qualified people that for your particular skill set, and then put together the resumes and set up the interviews for you. So if you're short on time, you don't have a lot of extra time to dig through the job boards, Virtual Staff Finder is a great solution. We're an outsourcing company, right? And we wanted to use them because we want to see if we thought it'd be good value for our readers, for our listeners. So we tried it out too, even though we can find staff ourselves. They found someone for us in Davao to do our keyword research, and she's fantastic. We picked her up full time, and we've been using her ever since. So
yeah, very good experience over there. And I would say that goes hand in hand with trying to get as many applicants as possible from as many different sources as you can. And then after that, what you want to do is put up roadblocks so you don't waste your time with a lot of interviewing.
Here's an actionable example. Go to onlinejobs.ph. Right, put the job out there, put it on several of the jobs boards we mentioned earlier, and we'll mention the show notes, but you're going to get a ton of applications in. What you want to do is on the job information sheet, you want to put something like, put this blurb in the email, make sure you mention this in the email, and then dump everything that doesn't have that. It means they did not pay attention to directions. If they can't pay attention to directions to get the job, they're going to be terrible when you bring them on board.
Exactly. And then I would also say try to use some sort of objective test after they email you. We use a grammar test that we know over time, if they score higher than an 80% on this particular grammar test, which we'll share with everyone in the show notes, that they're pretty much going to have good English. It's going to be good enough to communicate with them on a regular basis.
Yeah, we've got over 100 people in the U.S. that have taken this grammar test, and we've got probably about that here in the Philippines that have taken this grammar test as well. So we know if it's not a 75 or better, generally their English will be pretty poor. 80% or better, and it's really good. So that'll give you a good example of whether or not you can actually talk to them. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to have all these resumes and first start digging through them to determine who you think is better. Give them this grammar test as a roadblock. If they don't complete the grammar test, great, that makes your decision really easy. If they suck at the grammar test, great again, right? Because now you know you're not going to hire them. So it really weeds down the applicants to a nice, kind of like the same thing we do with keyword research.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a better test, if you want to use your own test with your own questions, go ahead and do that. But the key thing is make it objective. Make it something that you can assign a score with, that over time you'll be able to provide a baseline of who you should talk to and who you shouldn't.
And do it before you spend any time working on any of those resumes or applications. That way you're not wasting your time on people that you wouldn't have hired anyway. So our fifth question here is, how much should I pay my VA? Well, that's a really tough question to answer, right? It depends on what their skill set is, where they're located in the Philippines. I mean, just for example, if you want a basic VA that can handle most admin tasks, that kind of thing, in Manila, on average, you're going to pay about 20,000 pesos or about $440. In Cebu, you're going to pay about 15,000 pesos, and Davao, you're going to pay about 10,000 pesos or about $220, $230.
Yeah, but I would expect to pay more for specific or technical skill sets, programming, voice work like telemarketing, stuff like that, bookkeeping, legal. You're going to pay a little extra.
Yeah, and that's in any city that you're in. I mean, you can get a good technical like programmer here in Davao for 25, 30,000, where you're looking at probably 45, 50 or up in Manila. The reason for that is a lot of people will leave the province or even leave cities like Cebu or Davao because Manila is where the money's at. So you have a lot of people that go there for the money. Some people actually end up coming back here to places like Davao or back home. They'll take less money working online from their home city, but it's worth it because they can be close to their families.
Yeah, and workers here generally in the Philippines respect steady pay over commissions. I would generally stay away from any bonus type of scenario or scenario where they're commission only, that kind of thing. What they're looking for is steady, regular paycheck.
I'll give you an example. We had a job where we were looking at paying $8,000 as a salary plus commission. And so with their commission, they'd make generally anywhere from 12 to 15,000 pesos a month. They preferred a 10,000 flat fee. 10,000 flat fee was better for them because they knew it was steady. They were worried about it being less than that. So it's odd, but it is something they'd prefer the steady paycheck than any kind of commission or per piece type thing.
And that's generally because the economy of scales here are so small that they need that money to sustain their families. 13th month pay is generally accepted as a standard in the Philippines. That means a full 13th month for every 12 months they're hired.
Yeah, so if you hire someone in the middle of the year and you're paying them for 6 months, you're going to owe them for half a month at the end of the year. This is usually paid, it's supposed to be paid before December 20th, but normally be paid like in the first or second week of December. This isn't a Christmas bonus. This isn't extra. This is an absolute requirement here in the Philippines. Now, if they're off the books and they're not a technical employee for you, you don't have to do it. But I would suggest it's definitely something that's expected here.
Yeah, full-time here is going to be a lot better than part-time, half-time, or hourly work. I really suggest, even if you're anywhere near close to getting a 40-hour employee, round up to 40 hours and find them something to do so that they don't have a situation where they're trying to have another job at night or another time.
Yeah, man, you see this all the time. Well, we had an employee or a potential employee come in and say she was working 9 hours on the night shift and said, oh, that's fine. I can come in and work another 9 hours for you during the day, right? No problem. I can work 18-hour days every week.
Yeah, that didn't work out very well.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So a lot of times you want to make sure that they are full-time with you and you alone. So it's worth paying a little extra to make sure that you have all of their time. You don't want them moonlighting. We also had problems where people would work night shift with us and try to work during the day, and they would be sleeping. They'd be sleeping at their desk, those types of things. And you run into problems because they're doing the best they can to make the most money for their families and for themselves as possible. But you just, everyone has a breaking point, and 2 full-time shifts just isn't going to happen.
Yeah, and that's why I would say if you pay a good standard wage, get them for 40 hours a week, you probably will avoid that problem.
So our 6th point here, cultural differences when working with a VA in the Philippines.
We already talked about a little bit about this. Family trumps work. That's good and bad that comes with that, but family definitely comes first.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate that, especially being here. Like, I can see how people are so close to their families, and they have really extended families. It's kind of communal where everyone will make money and kind of contribute to the family money. So, the problem, though, is obviously for employee, and it's my cultural difference, right? Americans generally, you work, right? Work and you get paid. Like, who you are is sometimes determined by what you do. Right? And so it was difficult for me, I'd say, the first few months to really kind of get over that. I think it's still something I struggle with a bit, but you have to remember that family's going to trump work. So if something comes up with their family, they probably are going to leave. They're going to not be there for the day. That's going to happen.
Yeah, the other thing is that drives me a little crazy is the Filipino time, as we like to call it here. Punctuality is not as revered as it is in the West.
It's terrible. I'm falling into the Filipino time thing where I'll show up a little late. It's not that big of a deal. And especially if I'm talking to Americans or whatever back home, I'm 15 minutes late for our conversation. Like, what the hell are you doing, man? But it is the way it is. And I think it's specifically that way here in Davao, where it's kind of a slower city anyway, right?
Yeah, it's a little more laid back.
Yeah, I'll get there. It's no problem. For us, for interviews, that's a no-go. And I would expect it to be the same thing for you if you're hiring. If you're hiring and they're late to the interview or try to postpone or reschedule, thanks, but no thanks. There's plenty of people available.
Yeah, be firm, but be a little bit understanding that there is that cultural difference. If they know they're working with Americans, generally they do try to be on time.
One of the other problems is borrowing against future earnings. We've had this come up a couple of times in the past where, someone wants to borrow on their next paycheck. But you have to understand that everyone's living here and trying their best to make it work, but that's not always easy to pay it back the next time. So you don't want to cause yourself any problems in the future, any resentment, where they're always working to pay you back for the money they owe you.
Yeah, I would avoid the borrowing for future earnings if possible at all costs.
We had a similar situation where at one point a supervisor of ours was borrowing for her employees, borrowing from other employees in the company, and it caused this huge problem where she owed all this money, couldn't pay it back. We resolved that pretty quickly, but yeah, it was bad. So be careful loaning any money on future earnings. It's just not a good policy.
The Philippines culture here is a very respectful society. I expect you're going to get a lot of please sir, please ma'am, really looking out for your interests as their employer.
That's one of the things I really love. Like, for example, our content managers, right? When they took over the content management and were ordering from these people or whatever, they were more militant about looking out for our business and our niche sites than we were. Maybe it might have been because we were overloaded, but they really put a lot of love and care into making sure it works because it's important to them, and they can empathize well with your business and understand where you're coming from, so they really want to help you out, which is the cultural thing with the Philippines that I love.
Yeah, look, treat them well, pay on time, and you'll find dedicated and extremely honest and loyal workers. I mean, we have had multiple instances of very honest people coming forth here when mistakes were made in their favor. We had a guy just last week sign a new contract. The contract was 5,000 pesos more than he was supposed to be paid. It was a misprint on the contract, and he insisted that it was wrong. And we researched it and said, yeah, you're right, this is incorrect, and we corrected it.
And those are guys we love to hire. Thank you for being so honest. In fact, we'll make sure that we make it up to him in the future for being such a cool guy about it.
Yeah, another incident was one of our employees got a transfer that wasn't meant for her.
Yeah, way too much money.
Yeah, almost half a month's pay, 8,000 pesos, and she came back with the money, owned up to it, and said, yeah, I got this money, it's not mine, and gave it back. And we really believe the reason why that is because we treat our workers with respect and we make sure to pay them on time every time.
So our seventh point, what kind of things can a VA do for me or not do for me?
I love this question because we get it so often from our outsourcing side of the house. People email us with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's best to start off with a task-based approach. So you want to have screencasts, screenshots, and a very documented process to walk them through step by step what they need to do. You may want to explain the grand scheme at first, but when it comes down to the work, you want a nice documented step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of process.
Yeah, I think we've gone into this before, Justin, but it's important that you're familiar with the process. If you're trying to outsource something that's just an idea in your head and you're going to find a bunch of VAs to just do all the work for you, that generally doesn't work.
Yeah, I see this a lot too, especially with internet marketers. They go, okay, I want to hire my first VA, but I don't have enough of this particular task to give them 40 hours a week, maybe only 15. So let's say I want them to do some content writing for me 15 hours a week. With the rest of their time, I'd like them to set up websites. I was hoping they could do a little programming for me. I'd like them to do some voice work and call some ex-clients and see if we can get a little more money out of them. No, that's not going to work. The multitask approach, having one person that does a bunch of different things, is a really bad idea. Take someone who has skill in one particular area, and they may have some side abilities or tasks they can do, but use them for that one task.
Yeah, and I think that goes hand in hand with saying that you shouldn't try to throw someone into a management or supervisor position without learning the process first. Make sure they go through the entire production line of learning your process and being at least very familiar with how things work on a day-to-day basis before having them manage a team. Promote from within. Take your best people and put those people in charge of small teams.
Yeah, we're doing that right now. We need a couple more content managers because we're seeing that we're falling a little bit behind in that area. We've talked to our head of content management team, and what he's going to do right now is we're going to find a couple of writers, and we're going to have them local, and we're going to have them start off writing some content for us. They're going to beat them up a little bit, tell them what kind of content they need, and depending on how well they do, promote them to the content management position where they're then ordering and editing and uploading the content to our sites. So our 8th point here is reporting and tracking your VA's work. This is really important because you want to make sure you know how many hours they're using in a day, what they're doing with those hours, how many tasks they're able to complete, and this is going to be really important for you for future planning purposes.
Yeah, we're making it more complex than it really sounds. I mean, all you got to do is have a spreadsheet. On the spreadsheet, they need to report how many hours they worked. They need to report the number of tasks that they did over that time. And then you can simply roll up those reports and know over time averages of how many tasks they can do per hour. And that's great for establishing a baseline, seeing who's better than who, and knowing how many you're going to be able to do if you scale this process up.
I'll give you a real life example of this right now. We're adding about 40 sites a week to our spreadsheet, but they're not keeping up, right? If I don't know who's able to do how many of this in per hour, I'm not going to be able to tell where the gap is or the hole is. So right now, over the last 4 or 5 weeks or so, we've been tracking every single person, the hours they're putting in, and how many primary pieces of content they can order, secondary pieces of content they can order. Now we're going to go back and do a little bit of math and figure out what the current staff we have and the hours they're putting in. We find out the content management team is able to do 34.6 sites per week. We found out our link building team is able to do 27.8 sites per week. And so we're able to get kind of a good average, and then we know exactly how many we need from each team if we want to do 50 sites per week. If we want to do 80 sites per week, I can say we need to add this many people. We need to add this many people.
And we'll share our spreadsheets with you, well, at least the headers with you, so you guys will have a good idea exactly what we're talking about and how to track that information. It's also good to have an idea week to week what kind of improvement or decline you're getting.
Yeah, so we get a rolled up report each week from every supervisor, so we have a good idea on kind of what they're doing, what's going on, and like which team's falling behind. The 9th point we want to talk about is problem resolution with a VA. If something comes up, how do you get that fixed?
Well, buddy, you really got to set yourself up well from the beginning here. I mean, anyone who has employees back in the States or managed people back in the States will know that. If you have clear expectations up front and everything's well laid out, you tend to avoid problems.
Yeah, avoid the cancer in the first place, right? That's one of the most important points. And it's an easy one, right? It's, oh yeah, well of course, but it's true. If you let the cancer in, it's more likely to spread and cause you problems.
Yeah, make sure the problem doesn't stem from you either. I mean, have you really trained them well? Did you really give them the tools to get the job done? Do they understand the process? You know, did you check their work? Were you tracking everything? I mean, these are things that if you're not doing, you have to be honest with yourself. If a problem arises, it's probably your fault.
I come back to that whole thing where, hey, build me a site that makes me money. When they don't build you a site that makes you enough money, you can't blame them. I mean, that's ridiculous. You have to understand that that is your problem and not theirs.
Okay, so if a problem does happen and it is their fault, you should address it directly, but try not to hold their feet to the fire too much. It'll cause shame, loss of face, which is a big cultural issue here in the Philippines, and you don't want them to quit over something that may be relatively minor.
I have this problem a bit, especially when someone like screws up, or I think it might, intentionally screws up or causes problems or whatever. I tend to want to address that and hammer that point home. Well, unfortunately, that just doesn't work here. It's not going to be effective. You don't get anything more out of them, and they're not going to do any better work for you. So you have to make sure that you address it, but kind of either let it go or let them go.
Yeah, and then once you've addressed it, I'd say you retrain them, let them know that you trust them to fix the problem, and put measures in place to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, if you weren't tracking their numbers before, start tracking their numbers. If you didn't have the training tools in place they need to learn how to do what they need to do, make sure you have that the next time around.
Yeah, a good example of this was we missed a whole bunch of sites. Remember this, Justin, when we missed a whole bunch of sites we didn't put Google Analytics on?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so what we did was I approached the website supervisor, I asked him what was going on. He said they made a mistake, they missed it. We put a new process in place so that's double checked and that won't happen again. But instead of making a minor problem into a big issue. We addressed it, we fixed it, and we set up a process so it doesn't happen again.
So here's another thing. Do I need to hire a direct VA, or do I want to go through an outsourcing company? We get this a lot where someone, in our opinion, should hire a VA directly and not use our outsourcing company. And then there are other situations where they should. So we'll cover that a bit for you.
Yeah, I would say singular tasks, you can manage it well. Maybe it's only 1 or 2 people. A small project, that's is going to be ideal for a single VA.
Or if you need your project to be rock bottom cheap, like you absolutely have to have the lowest cost stuff, and quality and coordination is not that important, you can hire a direct VA.
Yeah, your margins are really low. Maybe you're dealing with just a small amount of niche sites. I would say that's a good way to go directly with your VA hire.
Yeah, people have asked us a lot, can we set up a niche team for them? And I've seen some other people are starting to get that started. Unfortunately, our problem is that we don't see enough margin in it for us. And if we do put enough margin in it, we don't see enough profit for you. So our problem has been we're not able to charge you enough to make it worthwhile. And if we do, we're ripping you off, basically.
Yeah, usually for our outsourcing company, we say project requires at least 4 agents working in coordination.
Let's say, for example, you need someone to work during the day and you need another team to pick up from where they left off at night, right? That's a good process or project for an outsourcing company. If you need multiple projects or multiple tasks run in tandem where they communicate back and forth, have a good management structure in place, that's a situation you need an outsourcing company and not just VAs.
Or if you're planning to scale to the future. I mean, if you're planning to take 4 to 10 to 15, I wouldn't try to hire those people directly. Go through an outsourcing company to coordinate everything for you.
That's where we can really get enough value add, I think, to make TriBPO worth it. When there's a more coordinated project, you and I, for example, are heavily involved generally on the front end, and we make our money on the back end. That's why you and I only take on projects we know we can be successful with, because otherwise we end up losing, right? We put a lot of time in on the front, and they cancel in 2 or 3 months. That's why we don't take projects like that anymore.
Right, and I'd also say that if you're looking to hire 15 to 20 people right off the bat, you might want to consider setting up your own capture center here in the Philippines. You could probably get one off the ground for $15,000 to $20,000.
I'll explain what a capture center is. Basically, it's everything is yours. You have the management team, you make decisions on hiring, the office is yours, has your lights, everything, but the company is set up through a company that's already established in the Philippines. So we're doing this now for clients where they come to us and say, we want it to be all our stuff, all of our people, everything. We'd rather just use your licensing in your name, and we'll give you an override. And it's an effective way to get your business up and running. We know it's probably a midterm solution, maybe 6 months to 18 months, and they'll probably set up their own company if it's successful.
So let's talk about the last point here. When and how to let your VA go. Hopefully this never happens, but it's something you should know about.
Well, if you have multiple VAs and you have your reporting in place and you're able to see, let's say they're able to do on average 15 of X, whatever X is per hour, and you have an agent that's way below, and you've worked with them, try to find out what the problem is, and they simply can't keep up, it's not working out, buddy.
Yeah, or if they continuously fail, follow directions, don't have any attention to detail, even after retraining them, going over things with them. You don't have to spend so much time with this, but I would say, 2 weeks of working with a person, they're making errors all the time, it just seems like they're not paying attention, that's definitely a time to consider letting them go.
And the worst, and this is obvious, but if they're dishonest, they're untrustworthy, or you've caught them, let's say, fudging the numbers on their weekly reports, their dailies, they're putting in different numbers than they're actually doing, that's someone that you do not want on your team. That's not an honest person.
Yeah, I would say retraining or giving them a second chance is not even worth it. Just get rid of that person as quickly as possible.
So Joe, how do you get rid of those people?
Well, I would say you take the soft approach in the beginning, especially for people that are just underperforming. Unlike the US, where you might approach them directly, sit down, have an HR talk, say, we're letting you go, yada, yada, yada. What I would do is I would limit their hours. I would say, unfortunately, there's no work for you this week. Contact me next week and let me know.
Yeah, make them redundant, hire another, get that person trained,
right,
and they no longer have as much work to do. So you simply cut back on their hours until they're redundant, basically.
And they will naturally find another job. So they will find something else to do, and you won't even have to have a confrontational fire.
Now, the confrontational fire does have to, I think, come into play when they're dishonest, untrustworthy, or fudging their numbers, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things you're going to want to make sure you do is you have to lock them out right away. Any passwords, anything they've had access to, change all that right away before you even have that conversation.
Exactly. And I love Google Apps for this, because with Google Apps, you can have everybody under one domain. We have tribpo.com. Everyone has an email address at tribpo.com. So once we let them go, we simply change their password at their TribePO email address. And that means anything that they've signed up for or are connected to under the TribePO email address, we now own and have control over.
Exactly. So, we've gone over some rockstar outsourcing tips. Let's get right into our ninja marketing tips, tricks, and our plans for the future.
The AdSense Flippers podcast continues.
So the first ninja tip we have for you is Hivedesk. Let's talk about Hivedesk a little bit, buddy.
Love Hivedesk. It's not the most feature-rich program for what it does, but because of its simplicity, I love it. It tracks not only the hours that people work, but also their screenshots and activity. So you have a virtual assistant, obviously he's all the way on the other side of the earth. You don't know what he's doing all day. Hivedesk runs a little program on his computer and takes screenshots every 7 to 13 minutes, or you can set the interval level, and automatically stores those in the cloud for you to access and evaluate in order for you to know how much to pay your VA.
Yeah, so it's a great tool for us too. And we deduct from the time where they have screenshots of Skype conversations there with other people outside the company, when they're looking at Facebook or they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing. We have someone that goes through that and deducts. So we use it here in the Philippines, and we're here. So working from the US, I absolutely would use Hivedesk. Funny note on this is we actually started with them when they were in beta. So before they were even, public, we started using them. We found out after the fact that the guy who originally created it sold it to some other guys, right?
Yeah, for $3,000.
Oh, dude, we would have bought that so quick. We love the program. Anyway, we've had a great experience with Hivedesk. They're fantastic. They've added a lot of tips. Remember when it only took screenshots every 5 minutes exactly?
Yeah.
And so our team started knowing, okay, better hide the Facebook, right? The 5 minutes is coming up. Then they randomized it for us, so it's a lot better now.
Yeah, and they're small enough still where they take feature requests like that. They offer a free trial, $15 a month for 2 workers, $35 a month for up to 5 workers. So it's very reasonably priced. Like I said, some of the advanced features may not be there that are in some of the other similar programs out there, but good enough for tracking virtual assistants.
Yeah, for value, it's fantastic. Definitely check out hivedesk.com. Second one we want to talk about is transferring money. So if you're going to send money to your VA in the Philippines, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, remithome.com is who I have to recommend over Zoom or Western Union. Those are probably the 2 more popular ways. That's how VAs are going to be asked to be paid here in the Philippines. But Remit Home gets you a better dollar to peso conversion, which means it'll actually cost you less money to transfer the same amount.
Often used by OFWs, or overseas foreign workers, and it's a great way for them to send money back to their families. And they have multiple ways you can send that money to the VAs to get paid.
Yeah, you can do it by cash pickup. You can do it so that VA could just go to the mall and pick the cash up directly, or go down to the bank and get it in their account. They could also load it onto a cash card. They have all kinds of ways of paying people.
Another thing that would be useful, especially if you need to show your VA some screencasts or actually share screens, is one you can do without downloading any software.
Yeah, so Skype does have some screen sharing ability, but you can't control the other person's computer. Sometimes you need to enter a password or use some other secure information. So we like a system called join.me. It's a free system, doesn't require any download, no sign up. Great.
Yeah, free, buddy. You can't beat that. Love that shit. Well, that's it for episode 9 of the AdSense Flippers podcast. Thanks for sticking with us. Hope you like our tips and the heart of this week's episode over outsourcing. If you want to make sure you got a chance to check us out on Twitter, I'm on there regularly at AdSense Flippers. Or you can check us out on Facebook, where we're going to start doing a bit more, offer some offers, maybe free giveaways. That's facebook.com/AdSense Flippers.
Yeah, we're trying to build up the Facebook peeps, so check us out.
Yeah, we'll send you some free stuff, and you can get some giveaways that we'll be having over the next month or 2. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye, everybody.
You've been listening to the AdSense Flippers podcast with Justin and Joe. Be sure to hit up AdSenseFlippers.com for more. That's AdSenseFlippers.com. Thanks for listening.